Good evening, welcome back. This is going to be the final video submission for SDI's Certificate in Firearms Technology Handgun Specialist. This is FTH223 Module 5. Again, this is the final installment for this particular program, and let's get started. So areas that I want to pay particular attention when doing an inspection on a firearm. For hammer fired, I'm going to check and make sure sights are present, make sure they're tight, they're not loose. I'm going to check the frame rails and make sure the frame rails are free of any defects, burrs, debris, anything like that. I can check the extractor, make sure that it maintains a spring tension. I'm going to check the fire pin safety plunger, make sure that it rebounds back as it's supposed to, and then I can test with it depressed, I can ensure the firing pin protrudes out of the breech. I want to make sure the breech face is clear, free of debris, no obstructions. And then I want to pay particular attention to the lugs on the interior of the slide. I want to make sure that they are free of any kind of machining work, any nicks and burrs. I want to check the buffer tube end, as well as the end of the slide. Want to make sure there's no nicks and burrs where it's going to interfere with the barrel. To dive further in, I would pull the components out, check the springs, make sure there's no issues with the springs. Moving to the barrel, I want to check the feed ramp. I have polished this one just a little bit. I want to make sure there's no burrs or any kind of obstruction in the barrel all the way through. I want to make sure the crown is good. Again, no obstructions. I'm going to check the lugs, the locking lugs, make sure they're square, there's no issues. And then I want to check and make sure that it locks up as it's designed to. Make sure there's no excessive play. Another thing that I can do is I can use a go no-go gauge. So here's a no-go gauge. I will put the no-go gauge into the barrel, slide the barrel in, and it should not lock up. Okay, and then I can do it with a go gauge, put it in the barrel, and it should lock up as it's supposed to. Okay, that would be one thing that I check. On the frame, I would check the frame rails, make sure, again, the biggest thing that I'm looking for any of this is any kind of obstruction that would prohibit the smooth operation of this firearm. Anything that would prohibit the movements, I'm going to check the frame rails, both front and rear. I want to make sure there's no cracks, no breaks. Same as the barrel and the slide. Make sure there's no cracks or fractures. But with this being a polymer frame, I'm definitely going to check for that. I don't want it to affect the reliability. Moving to magazine, I want to check the magazine body. I want to make sure there's no excessive damage. I want to check and make sure that it'll feed, it'll hold a round, and that round is not gonna hang up at this this neck. I'm gonna check the spring. I want to make sure, you know, it's not bent up in all kinds of crazy ways, no kinks. Check the follower for any deformations. I'll put this back together. One thing I generally do when I test any of my magazines, I'll put a couple of snap caps. I'm going to use 3. And what I'm looking for is I want to make sure that the mouth is holding that round, but I want it to be able to push that round out with my thumb in a smooth fashion. I want to make sure that it is going to come out of that magazine as smooth as possible, but I want to make sure that it maintains the a tight grip on that round, so it doesn't just kind of fall out on its own. The trigger, I want to make sure the trigger will in fact, on double action, I want to make sure as I squeeze that trigger it is going to retract that hammer, and I'm going to do it in half cock. Release the trigger, make sure the hammer is going to stay where it needs to stay on that sear notch, and then I'm going to go all the way till it breaks and make sure that it does release that hammer, making sure that it's on that guide pin. I'll do a half cock of the hammer, make sure the sear lug is engaging and it is holding in place, and while the hammer is back, I'll make sure safety is still working. I'll go to the full rear and watch the sear as it engages the notches on the hammer, again engaging that safety, and I can do a functions check that way as well. 10 things I learned. This is going to be relatively quick. I really enjoyed the history and the overall aspect of the hammer fire, how far it has come along from you know, flint to percussion caps to what we have now, primers, you know, and understanding the critical measurements of the components, tolerances, and things like that. You know, it's hard to tell on the camera, but the barrel tapers right there. It starts a small taper, you know, and if you're manufacturing these, that's a critical point to know. Understanding the timing and how these components all work together, you know, it's really interesting to go through that. Understanding blueprints and schematics and measurements and all of that stuff can aid into the troubleshooting. Modifications, I want to do modifications to this. I want to do front slide serrations. It'll help further aid in the manipulation. You know, press checks, it gives you a place to grip on the front of the slide. I do my press checks from the front. You know, and it'll slightly decrease slide weight. Time it would take, I would say, doing it, so I'm going to be doing this by hand. I imagine it's going to take several weeks. Based on research, the average time is 1 to 2 weeks, and that's with a milling machine and experience. I do not have either one of those, so this is going to take a while. And I'll be doing it by hand with files. Cost. The easiest way to do this would be to get a checkering file, but I want to try to match the rear as much as I can. Whereas checkering files, it limits you to the V-notch. And looking on brownells.com, they range anywhere from $35 to $80 depending. A vise, I'd use a vise to kind of hold the slide. Rasps, stuff like that. Most of it I have. Jeweler files I have. But that is one thing that I plan on doing is cutting those serrations. And then I'll finish them off with fine grit sandpaper, kind of round out edges a little bit, and then polishing, and then I'll re-blue if I get down to that. Knowing the tolerances, knowing how deep I can go without really affecting the structural integrity is going to be critical. But I think I can do it. At least do it enough to where I have that front slide purchase. So other than that, I hope you all have enjoyed this module and these videos, and thanks for watching.